Welcome to the Elokus channel. This is class number 17. In the discourse, Oteh, which is the second discourse of the great book, set of discourses, B'Shash Akdimu 5672. So we are holding now, this is class number 17, and we are holding towards the end of chapter 7. So we were talking yesterday about the utter nothingness of the world, even of any level of world, compared to the Or Ein Sof, to the Infinite One, and how its insignificance is far greater and immeasurably greater than the insignificance of the lower world to the highest world. And the point that was strongly emphasized was that the lower worlds, they really have an existence in the higher worlds. As the worlds evolve, each world is more of a manifestation and more of a limitation of the very same energies that existed in the previous realm, in a higher realm, on a more subtler and therefore on a more expansive state. Because the more things become things, the more stiff they become, the more rigid they become, the more fixed they become, the more limited they are. The more they are in the abstract, and so the more powerful they are. So therefore, what we're saying is that the lower worlds really all have a root in the higher world, and the higher world has a root in even a higher world. And that's the whole process of Hashem emanating worlds, where one world evolves into the next, which means the worlds are produced outward to express themselves more and therefore become weaker and less and more defined until we end up with the physical world. Although we're going to see today later in the class that in order to get to the physical, there has to be a quantum leap, not just an evolution. But we're going to get to that soon. But the main point is that the lower worlds exist within the spiritual and within the highest of worlds. And therefore you can't argue on them that they are nothing. Not absolutely nothing to the higher worlds. They have some value because they really exist. As we said yesterday, if the higher worlds would stop downloading and transmitting input and content into the lower worlds would cease to exist as they are, but they wouldn't cease to exist completely. They would just be reincorporated in the higher realms. And ultimately everything would be reincorporated in Atzilus. However, that's only true about the lower's rung of worlds versus Atzilus. But when we're looking at Atzilus, which is the first world, and its relationship to the pure infinite light that precedes it, over there, the world doesn't exist higher than Atzilus. It's over there you can't say, like it says about God, that he doesn't have any of these characteristics, any of these midos, any of these characteristics that there is in Atzilus. So it's truly innovated in Atzilus. It's truly new, and it doesn't exist higher. And if Hashem would cease to innovate and to produce it, it would be utterly and completely null and void, as if it never existed. And therefore, even while it exists, its value is utterly insignificant and valueless compared to the Or Ein Sof, with a much deeper and greater valuelessness and meaninglessness than the lower worlds are to the higher world. That's the general idea that we've discussed till now. So now he's going to continue explaining this idea. What means Ein Aroich? So he says, Upidish Ein Aroich, and the meaning of the concept of Ein Aroch, where we say something it doesn't have any value to, when you're measuring one thing to the other, and you say it is completely valueless. The Inyan Erech, the idea of having value, Echad L'Gab Alafim, is 1 to 1,000, or 1 to thousands. So 1 to thousands, although it's very small, but it's still a piece of it. And even if you take 1 to 1 billion, since 1 is a piece of 1 billion, it might be a tiny, tiny billionth of it, but it's still something of it. It's a piece of it. And therefore, you can't dismiss it utterly. It's only a small piece. Now, that's when it comes to physicality, a piece. When one thing is taken from the other, it's a piece of it. So much so that when you take a crumb away from planet, I don't know, what's the big planet, Jupiter, you take one crumb out of Jupiter, Jupiter is missing that crumb. It's missing that piece. It weighs less. But in the spiritual worlds, when you say one thing is a crumb of the higher, it's a piece of the higher, it's a little different. It's not a piece in a sense that if you take it, once it's emanated or once it comes out, it's lacking in the source. It's not like if you take a drop of water out of the ocean, there's a drop of water less in the ocean. Because if you take, for example, a piece of Atzilus and you emanate Atzilus, the world of Atzilus, to bring forth the next world, Bria, and from the world of Bria, there is an evolution into the world of Yetzirah. It's not. There's nothing. Nothing is missing in Atzilus. It would be more of an example like fire. See, fire would be a good example because fire is more spiritual. If you light a match, if you light a cigarette from a big blazing inferno, being that fire is the most closest to the spiritual world, although it's physical, you don't lose any fire by taking the fire away. So in that way, we would say it's insignificant, the little flame that you took. But because they both are fire, if you say a tiny little fire, a small little match burning, is insignificant to a blazing, huge inferno. If you say it's nothing, if it is nothing, then the huge fire is also nothing, because it's just a big, huge nothing. So therefore, he's explaining that in the concept of, in the spiritual, there is a concept of evolution, which is called cause and effect, and the lower realities are first included. First, they exist in a higher state in the higher world or in the higher realm, and then they evolve further outward. And when they evolve, you cannot. It has somewhat of a significance. The effect has somewhat of a significance because first it was included in the source. Let's read how he explains it. And he's going to give a tangible example to that so we'll understand it better. And in spiritual things, it's the same idea, but there's only one major difference, like we said earlier. In the physical, a piece, as no matter how small it is, but a piece of something, when you take it away, it becomes missing in the original entity. But in the spiritual world, it doesn't miss, it's not lacking anything, but yet it's still considered as if something of itself was given. Let's see. Baruchnius, and in the spiritual realm, it's the idea of ilavi olol. Ilavi olol is close to the idea of kind of the concept of cause and effect. Sha'olol, which the effect, kolol, is included be'elasai, in its cause. And this is Ilan Olol is a philosophical term. Cause and effect is more siba and mesuvav, but it's hard to find a good word that expresses the concept of the word literally of ilavi olol. For who, maybe there is a philosophical English term for it, but I'm not familiar yet. For who, maybe one of the listeners will share a better word for it. For who, and it is like a small part of it. Meaning the effect is like a little piece of the cause. Rak, however, and this is what I mentioned earlier, this is in the parentheses over here, once the evolution happens and the lower element comes forth and comes out, it doesn't make a hole, it doesn't make a cavity, so to speak, a lacking in the source. However, that does not mean that it's not part of it. And the lower level of the cause, mislabeshes bi'olol, becomes enclosed in the effect. Meaning to say like this, the cause and the effect, the two maintain a relationship all the time. That means because it's not utterly insignificant, the way they relate to each other is that one is interlocked with the other. Now, to understand what this means, that the lower level of the cause has is invested and enclosed in the effect, it's hard to understand that in the abstract. So we're going to use over here, he brings an example for that. Like when it comes to intelligence and emotions. So intellect is called the cause, and emotions are called the effect, because emotions come from the intelligence. When you have an idea, and let's say it's a wonderful, you have an idea about something really, 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 really special, a new project you want to do, a new innovation, I don't know, whatever it is. You'll find out about something, a new invention that was made, and you get to know it really well, and you understand how it changes everything, how it can make life so much easier and your capabilities so much greater and your business so much more powerful, an incredible tool. You learn about it. It's in the beginning, you're not excited about it because you don't know anything about it. But when you study it and you learn it and you become familiar with it and you grasp it, you understand what it's all about. So then you get excited about it and you want it, you're passionate about it, and so on and so forth. So you see the emotion, which is the passion, the excitement, is a product and is an effect of the intelligence. So intellect is called the ilah, it's called the cause, and emotion is called the effect. Now let's take it to the next step. Emotion, excitement, passion, fervor, or sometimes fear and dread is opposite emotion. So these emotions, because you have all that energy, powerful energy of excitement. So what's its outlet? What does it produce? So when you're excited about something, you can't stop thinking about it. That means that emotion flows into thought, or that thought is a byproduct, is born of the emotions. And a strong excitement about something causes your minds to think about it. Again, excitement can be a positive excitement or a negative excitement. People are afraid these days of, because of certain developments regarding the upheaval in the United States, this, that. So if you find yourself being a little anxious about what's going on, there's so much unrest. So, then what happens? Then without even preparing it, your mind is drifting off and thinking about it so much of the day, like what's going on. You're checking the news, you're looking, wow, it's happening, this, that. So the thoughts are being driven by the emotion. So the way it works is like this: the intelligence, the concept, produces the excitement, and so in that case, the intelligence is the ilah, is the cause, and the emotion is the olul, which means the effect, the derivative that comes from it. Then the emotions become the cause. That's the chain of evolution, and the thought is now the olul, which means the derivative, the effect. Now, what happens when you think about something a lot? Some people don't have to think a lot. Immediately when they think about something a tiny bit, they're already talking. But even if you're not a person like that who talks everything, but if you have a big bombardment of thoughts that you're really thinking about something a lot, usually that translates that in conversation, it's going to come out. You're going to be speaking to someone on the phone, unrelated. You called someone to speak to them about, lending you a hammer because you needed to knock on a nail and you can't find your toolbox. So, and before you know it, you're in a conversation with them and you're talking about whatever it is that's on your mind. Why is that? Because the thoughts that you've been thinking then create speech. So you see how there is an evolution. So now what he's saying is like this: in all these cases, the next stage, the effect is really included first it exists in a subtle way in the source, in the cause. And more than that, the cause itself encloses itself. There is a little bit of the cause that vests itself and serves as a motor for the effect. An energizer of the effect, a little battery for the effect. So let's talk in the first case. Intelligence, ideas, is about objective truths, okay? It's not excitement. It's getting to know things for what they really are, okay? That's the intelligence, the ability to be able to be completely objective and to be able to take in information and understand things. Okay? That's the intelligence. As a result of the intelligence, there is now a subjective feeling. That's what emotions are, subjective feelings, how I feel about it. I'm excited about it, I love it, I hate it. Whatever it is, it creates an emotion and excitement. So you find that the point that he's making right now over here is that the tail end of the intellect actually is present within the emotion. That means like this, that when you're excited and you have an emotional reaction to whatever it is that you understood, so inside that emotion is a bit of the intelligence. In other words, it's not just excitement, there is somewhat of a sense of the why that's felt in the emotion. The emotion has the flavor of why am I excited? Because I appreciate the value of whatever it is. So even though I'm not in the world of intelligence now, I'm not in the world of the information of it, I'm in the world of how I feel about it. But because the emotion is born out of the intellect has to be present in the emotion. Now it says like this, and he speaks about it later in the Maamorim. We're going to have definitely one discussion about it, probably more than one. That while a person is sensing the idea in his intellect, actually the emotions can't be born. The emotions need the intellect to get a little bit weaker and a little bit more extinguished. In other words, the concept, the idea, the sharpness of the idea has to slow down a little bit. You have to divert your attention a little bit from the clarity of whatever it is that you know in order for the emotions to start to move into that space. The emotions need their own space. If the space is occupied by the intellect, if you're too much into the concept or the information of what it is that you're excited about it, you can't be excited because you're just in the world of the thing. You're not feeling yourself that much. Okay, there's a discussion for its own later. We touched upon it on a class a while ago. So the intellect, the sharpness of the brightness of the intellect has to get a little dimmer. It has to go out of focus, and then the emotion can come in. But if the intellect would be dimmed out completely, like imagine a light dimmer, and the light of the intelligence would be dimmed out till you have absolutely no trace of the concept of the idea of the why you're excited about something, then the excitement won't have energy. The excitement has to have somewhat of the intellect still present in the emotion, in the excitement, to keep the excitement alive. What is that showing you? That is showing us how much the effect and the cause, the ila and the olol, are significant to each other. One incorporates the other, one feeds the other, one sustains the other. They're interlaced, even though the emotions are a product of the intellect. They're less and less significant than the intelligence, but you can't say they're not significant at all. So much so that the intelligence bends down and enters the world of the emotion to sustain it. And even, as he's going to explain soon, the emotion, although emotions are different than cold intellect, but if in the realm of the intelligence lies in a very quiet and benign state, the seeds of the excitement. Although you're not feeling the excitement when you're deeply engrossed in the idea, but the seeds to get excited is already there. So that's the emotions when they exist in the intellect. So what we're showing over here is the two extremes. The effect is lodged. It begins inside the belly of the cause. Inside the intelligence is the emotion, and vice versa. Once the emotion is born and goes outside of the intellect, the mother, if you might say the intellect, is the mother, nurses the baby. She takes of her milk, so to speak. She puts a piece of herself into her child. A piece of the intellect, some of the juice of the intellect flows inside the emotions to keep the emotion healthy and strong. As we discussed with intellect and emotion, same exact idea is also when it comes to emotion and thought. The emotions, although emotion itself is not thought, emotion is a feeling, a powerful engine, a powerful fire, or a powerful It's more than thought. It's much deeper than thought. It's a whole different. But inside the emotion, in a subtle state, are the thoughts, and then later when the thoughts come out, it's not just dry thought. You feel the energy of the emotion inside the thought. It's not the discussion right now, so I'm only touching upon it very lightly. And the same is with thought and speech, and so on and so forth. So it means that whenever there is evolution, one thing pre-exists in the other. When it comes out, it still maintains a connection, an investment, which means they're interlocked, interwoven, and therefore it brings you to the conclusion that one level to the other one is not insignificant, because they're very much part of each other. That's the idea that he is stating over here. So let's see. And the lower level of the cause, mislabeshes, encloses itself in the effect, like with intellect and emotion, and then machshava, and then thought, dibur and speech, umaisa, and even action. The power of thought and the power of speech, which one evolves from the other. Okay. Shehein, which they are neran, which they are nefesh, ruach, neshama. Which means like this, that these three levels, intelligence, emotions, and then thought, speech, and action. So thought, speech, and action is considered in general one level. And then emotions is considered a level of its own. And intellect is considered a level of its own. So it's three levels. Intelligence, emotions, and thought, speech, and action, which is considered practical behavior. So now these three things, these three stages, are all stages of evolution, where one thing evolves from the other. And spiritually, in terms of the human soul, we know that there is various levels, gradations of soul. And generally, we know there are 5 names to the soul, which means 5 levels of the soul. And here he's speaking about the lower 3 levels of the soul that are called neshama, ruach, and nefesh, from up down, or from down up, nefesh, ruach, neshama. Acronym is referred to as naran. Naran means nefesh, ruach, neshama. So nefesh would be the energy of thought, speech, and action. Ruach would be the energy of emotion. Ruach, which is called spirit, would be the energy of emotion, the spiritual power of emotion. And neshama would be the spiritual power of intelligence. So we know, what are we saying? That just like we're saying that the intellect produces the emotion in a manner of cause and effect, and the emotion produces the behavior, the thought, speech, and action in a manner of cause and effect. So that would mean that these 3 levels of soul, nefesh, ruach, neshama, are interlocked one with the other, and one evolves from the other. And the next level is not considered utterly insignificant to the previous level. It's lesser, it's inferior, but it's not insignificant. V'hu inyan biyah. And in the worlds, these 3 levels, that's in the human experience, it's nefesh, ruach, neshama, in the human self. In the general cosmic order, because the human being and the cosmos are aligned one with each other. God made the world be like it in the shape and in the image of the human. So just like in the human, there's these 3 levels. So too in worlds, there's general 3 levels. And all of creation, Bria, is created from the level called neshama. And over there, the world of Bria, which means creation, is filled with very, very high level intelligent beings. Just like the highest level neshama is intelligence. Then Ruach, the next world, which is the world of Yetzirah, is the world of spirit, of Ruach. And it's filled with supercharged emotional characters. Those are the angels primarily. Fired up, powerful. A lot of excitement going on in that world. And that's why when we discuss the angels, we always speak about their fervor, their excitement, their passion, their flaring fire, their roaring, singing, and all that. And finally, we get to the world of Asiya, which is the world of completion, which includes the physical world, which is more the practical world. Thoughts, speech, and action. So that's beyond these two. So here too, one evolves from the other. And then he adds, V'chein Atzilus. Atzilus, although Atzilus is above these three worlds, and therefore it would be compared to the fourth level of the soul, which really is considered an Or Makif. The three lower levels of the soul are enclosed in the body. They're more Oiros Bekalim, lights and vessels. But Atzilus compared to Bria, Tzira, Asiya, to the three lower worlds, Atzilus compared to Biyah is considered a Makif, an encompassing energy. It's higher than vessels. However, for the discussion that we are having here, Atzilus as well is part of this evolution. The evolution of worlds. Atzilus really is higher than intellect. It's really the Chachma power. Chachma, even though Chachma is one of the intelligent powers, but in some ways Chachma is still considered or makif, encompassing light. We're not going to get into it right now. But for the sake of the general idea that he's developing over here, all of these worlds are evolving worlds one from the other, and therefore, since Bria evolves from Atzilus, and Yetzira evolves from the world of formation, evolves from the world of Bria, of creation, and the world of completion, Asiya, evolves from the world of Yetzira, in a manner of cause and effect, that would mean that even the lowest of the chain, that means they're all linked together with a chain, and if you have a chain where you have a chain with links, and one link links into the other, if you look at the chain made up of these links, you can see how each link invades the space of the lower link invades the space of the upper link, and the upper link invades the space of the lower link. They each encroach in each other's space, which means they exist. Each one exists in the other's world. If they exist in each other's world, they're not utterly insignificant one to each other. And if that's true about two links in the chain, it is also true about the highest link and the lowest link. That although they are separated by many, many links in between, 30, 40 links, don't make a difference how many, even if it's a very long chain, but since the bottom link is linked up to the next one, which is linked into the next one, which is linked into the next one, and each one has somewhat of a relevance to the one higher than it, ultimately there is some bit of relevance to the lowest, even to the highest. It would be like, to the one link on top of it would be like the significance of 1 to 10. The two links above it would be the significance of 1 to 100. The three links above it would be the significance of 1 to 1,000. The four links, it would be like 1 to 10,000. And then, which obviously in each one, the significance becomes less and less, but it still will always have some kind of a value. And that's the idea of erech, value, where one thing evolves from the other. But so that's all called erech. There is value. There is a evolution of worlds. One comes from the next. And remember what we said in yesterday's class, the last class. We said that everything that exists in the lowest world, from cherries to tomatoes to, I don't know what, anything, minerals, every plant, every entity, every creature, every being, every single thing exists in Atzilus. Albeit in a very, very, very distant, high, magnificent level way. That's all called erech. But when we say something has no erech, where it's not to be found in its source. Although entity A produced entity B, but when it's ein aroch means if it's the Or Ein Sof, if it's God Himself producing a world, then what he is producing is completely innovative. It's not something that exists inside of him that he's just spitting out. It's something that he's producing, and therefore it doesn't exist in him. And therefore it is utterly, utterly, utterly and absolutely insignificant to nothing. If so, why is he creating it? That's a good question. Because that means that he's deliberately creating it. Because it's not evolving from him just by chance. He's deciding to create it. Yes, he's deciding to create something that is utterly insignificant. Why would he create something insignificant? That's a good question. But that's the story. Okay, and we're going to leave it over here. I thought we'll finish chapter 7, but not ready yet. There's just Hashem, tomorrow's class. Mashiach come today.